Okay, so we're looking at Traminette right now. Traminette makes a really floral, estery, kind of has a lot of terpenes that are desirable in wine, and they develop because of sunlight exposure and heat. They develop more rapidly if clusters are very highly exposed, and less quickly when they're less exposed to sunlight. So when deciding when to take a sample or deciding when to harvest, it's easy to walk down vineyard rows and you see fruit. It sticks out, especially on kind of low vigor vines. This vine right here was cane pruned, and it has just low vegetative growth in general compared to the whole block. So if you were to walk down the row, you're gonna more likely pick these and say, oh, Traminette, it's perfectly ripe, and you taste the berries and they have a nice floral, fruity character. The acid's much lower. But if you go over to a vine that's more typical of the block, that's more vigorous, you can see this one is still has the nets on it. I wanted to show this just so you can see how much vegetative growth it has. It pushes a lot of summer laterals because it's so vigorous, and they're coming through the nets. And they're also providing shade. So this sample is a little harder to take. So up under the canopy, you kind of have to dig to get your sample. You can see these are less golden color. They're staying humid longer. You're starting to get a little rot. There's some sour rot right there that's kind of spreading. So you can see that if without really analyzing what percentage of fruit is inside the canopy versus what's nicely exposed, you have to take a representative sample in order to get an even number or a representative number of both shaded and well exposed fruit. So if you walk down the row and just pick the fruit you can see, you're getting well exposed fruit that should have a lot of flavor, higher sugar, lower acid. And if you would make your decision to harvest just based upon that sample, when the fruit comes in, it's going to be lower in sugar, higher in acid, lower in flavor, because there's probably a large percentage of these clusters that you didn't account for in your sample. So you really have to be strategic about the position you take a sample from within the canopy, and it has to reflect what's actually out in the vineyard. So let's look at a few other examples. So if we compare this cluster, let's walk over to highly exposed clusters. This is going to have much less flavor, lower sugar, lower acid, lower pH. This will have higher pH, a little bit higher sugar, much more flavor, and lower acid. So depending on the relative exposure of the entire block and what's in order to get a representative sample, you have to pick from representative clusters, meaning you have to get a proportion that's inside the canopy and a proportion that is well exposed, and that has to be relative to the actual exposure of fruit in the vineyard.